Hello there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. If you're keeping track, this is episode 100, which is a great big, nice round number. I've been doing this for 100 weeks now. Makes me feel kind of good. And as a reward to myself for for lasting that long, I decided that this week I'm going to talk about my very favorite game of all time. Now, this won't be a surprise to anyone who's seen my top 100 list or talked to me about any games in the last several years. That game is called Summoner Wars. So I'll already spoil the final rating, which is a 10 out of 10, but I wanted to take some time and indulge myself and tell you what I find so interesting about this game. So with that, we're going to go through our normal format. I will be able to show you some of the game played online, which I don't always have the ability to do, but I believe I'll be able to this time. Anyway, without much more in the way of introduction, I guess I should say that Wednesday Whimsy is a short show that I do every Wednesday evening, where I talk about a board game, a top 10, board game topic, or some other topic that I feel like talking about. And like I mentioned, this week it is Summoner Wars. So let's get ready. So what is Summoner Wars about? Well, really, this is it was designed kind of to be a low-cost card game version of HeroScape. But ultimately, you have a summoner, a powerful mage of some sort, and your goal is to keep your summoner alive while eliminating your opponent's summoner. You do that and you win. It's a game of tactical combat. It's also it's kind of one half hand management and one half tactical movement, dice rolling, and combat. So there's a lot of interesting decisions that you're going to be making. But if you're the first person to eliminate the opponent's summoner, you win. There's not really a possibility for a stalemate. Someone's eventually going to get there. And that's what it's about. So how does it work? And for this one, I am going to come over here. Now, I'm showing you and talking to you today about Summoner Wars 2nd Edition. I'll talk a little bit in the final rating about some of the differences between it and 1st Edition, but I'll just say I like them both equally. So let me see if I'm able to show you this. I have here just an online game that I have started. I didn't pick it with any particular intent. I just picked these two factions to play against each other so that we could show. So on your turn, you are going to be doing these 6 phases, and you're going to do them in order. Your summon phase, what you have over here are a hand of 5 cards. And, if we click on the card, you can see it has this cost here. That's how much magic you have to spend. Magic is tracked in this little pool over here. You can place these cards adjacent to your gates. And adjacent, of course, is just orthogonally. And you'll simply, that magic cost will be deducted. So, for example, I'll summon, this demon has a special ability that lets it go next to other units, but I'll summon this Oathsworn so that it's not unaccepted. And you'll see that the Oathsworn had a cost that was 1 magic. That was written over here. And so that was deducted from my pool. And if I wanted to, well, sure, why not? I could summon this one. Never mind. I could summon this one here. Sure, why not? And it just warns me that it'll harm my summoner because of its ability. Anyway, after I've summoned all the units I would like, I can then move. And I can move 3 units, and every unit I move can move 2 spaces. Now, I want to make sure I'm able to attack. That's going to be important here in a moment. But for example, I could move my Oathsworn there. I could move my demon up here. And sure, why not? I will move my summoner right there. And then, after I've done all the movement I'd like, I can take these gates and I can put them in my back row or adjacent to my summoner wherever he happens to be. This is my summoner here, if I hadn't mentioned it. Then comes attacking. Now, in 2nd edition, when you attack, you're going to look at this number here, and that's how many dice you're going to roll. And then you'll see the symbol. Some of these have a sword. It means they can attack something next to them. And some of them have a bow, meaning that they can attack something up to 3 spaces away. So if we have, for example, this Oathsworn attack this rogue up here, it's going to roll 3 dice, because that was its attack value. And these 2 bows that it got, that went by a little quickly, those are hits. That thing had a life that was 2 or less, and so it died. And when it did, I got 1 magic. And magic, of course, is the resource that you're going to use to kind of fuel your game. And, my summoner here, he got a boost because of a special ability, and now his attack is going to be valued at 4. So we'll see that. And if I hit this thing 5 times, which won't be possible on 4 dice, you'll see that it will die. But we'll see how many hits I got. 1, 2, 3 hits. All right, that's decent. And then, I don't know, I can use this thing here to kind of try and quell it. We'll do that. Well, it managed to survive. So I only got 3 attacks. This thing has an ability that lets me put it in front of my summoner. And after I'm done with that, I'm largely done with the main portion of my turn. The last thing I can do is these cards I have remaining in my hand, I can discard to get me 1 magic each. So you'll see, I don't have to discard them, but at the end of my turn, I'm going to draw until I have 5 cards. So if I hang on to cards, I won't be drawing new ones. And I'll also have less magic. It's a trap. Don't do that. Then I'll, hit that. It's going to draw my new cards, and my opponent's going to kind of do the same thing using their special abilities. We don't necessarily need to watch that. That's just, I figured, since there's a really good online implementation, a good way to kind of show you how the game works. So really, you're going to go back and forth doing that until somebody wins, and that's kind of how it works. Now, I mentioned that there's a lot of hand management going on, and there's a lot of there's some deck building that can happen, and then there's this tactical movement. You want to make sure that you can always attack. You want to make sure that your summoner is able to attack, because like you saw, I mean, he was rolling 4 dice. He could even have rolled more depending on where he was with his special ability. Your summoner usually is a unit you want in the fray so it can attack and use its special abilities, but you don't want to waste its life by putting it out where it can easily get killed. So it's sort of an interesting balance between that. So what makes the game special? Well, a lot of things. The first thing is, I showed you in about 5 minutes really all of the rules of the game. The last thing is knowing the special abilities, but the special abilities are all printed on the card. None of this keyword crap. It's just all printed there in plain English. And so I tell people I can get this game from the shelf to the table and back to the shelf again in 30 minutes or less. This game is not long. This game is not hard. Yet it manages to have this intellectual nature as well, because it's not just tactical movement and rolling dice. There's also playing smart. There's knowing what's in your deck. There's knowing what's in your opponent's deck, or at least what can be. There's sort of this intellectual gamesmanship that's going on as you watch what your opponent does and react, not just to what they have out, but what they might have out. As you play it more, you'll learn the cards the other player might have, and you'll be able to start planning around them. This is especially true in first edition, but also in second edition. There's definitely an aspect of it, especially if you play with the stock decks. And on the stock decks, this is a game that really thrives in the open it up, pre-built, ready to go model. Each deck, and there are lots of them now. In old Summoner Wars, there were 40 different standalone decks. In new Summoner Wars, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18, 20, 22 maybe decks. I could count them if I wanted, but they're coming out with them at about once a quarter. But these stock decks are not boring. They're interesting. They're built to work together as a whole. But both versions of Summoner Wars had some easy rules to allow you to take cards from one deck and put them in the other. Those rules are different among the two versions, but it's really easy to kind of customize and move things around and change the way the deck is working if that's what you want to do. But you don't have to. You can be perfectly competitive and have a great time with just this single box that you buy with the cards in it, and it's ready to go. Another thing that's really great about this game is just how fun it is. And I mentioned all the different decks. There's so much variety here. This is a game that, where it is now. Okay, when first edition came out, it only had the 6 decks, and I was like, but now where it is with so many different things to play with, this is just a game you could play forever. This is a game I have played between the two versions literally thousands of times, and I'm talking documented plays here. Um, it's just such a fun game. It's something that gives me a thrill that only a game like Twilight Struggle can give me. Sort of this intellectual and tactical and adrenaline rush as you sort of have your plan and you're trying to execute it. The difference is this does it in 30 minutes or less, whereas Twilight Struggle takes 3 hours. Uh, I mean, this is just such a fantastic, fun game. I love how balanced the different decks are as well. This is a company that does rigorous playtesting. I used to do playtesting for them, actually, for first edition. And they just, I mean, they are constantly monitoring the stats of their decks. They're seeing what players are doing, and they're willing to sort of come back in later and rebalance things if they need to. But it's relatively rare that they have to. These decks, they just all feel so different. And I had in that little example I showed you, there was those dwarves that I was playing, and they're all about sort of big destruction and trying to get these boosts to work right. Whereas that other one I was playing about is all about being super fast and rushing to the opponent's side. And there's some that heal, some that resurrect cards, from the discard pile. There's some that really just have the ability to draw all their cards into their hand and have superpowers when they're all there. But at that point, they're going to run out of time. I mean, they're going to just not be able to do any. They're going to run out their deck very quickly. When you run out your deck in Summoner Wars, there's no consequence. You just can't draw any more cards, and sometimes that's consequence enough. This game is just really special. It's really fun. It's a game I can play with just about anybody. Obviously, only 2 players. I guess it wasn't obvious, but it is only a 2-player game. But if I have one other person, whether or not that person has played Summoner Wars, I know that I can set it up, teach it, and we're both going to have a good time. And I don't mean like I, essentially play for the other person. I mean, I can teach somebody how to play with these starter decks, and they'll be competitive and ready to go, even against a seasoned player. I say I'm seasoned. I've played a lot. That doesn't mean I'm any good. I just play poorly a lot. It's just such a fun and fascinating game, and that's really what does it. Also, the artwork. Second edition has some great artwork. It took me a minute to get used to because it was such a change from first edition, but it looks great too. It's just a fantastic and fun game. So where's the but? There isn't one. I mean, there's really nothing I don't like about this game. It can be frustrating if you are rolling 8-9 dice on your turn and they all miss, but or if you don't draw the cards you need. But that's kind of a feature of the game. Sometimes you're just going to have to make do with your plan B or your plan C. And part of the game is knowing when to switch. I wish the box were bigger. I guess, I wish it held everything in a neat, organized way. Doesn't currently. I have a little divider, but I've got more decks than the divider is able to hold. So there's that. But I don't know that I can really fault the game for that. Another special thing. There's a fantastic, as you saw, online implementation. They make a deck free every now and then, and so you can play with that deck against anybody, or you can pay a little bit of money and have access to everything. It's a great way. It's a game that I can play against a real person really easily. Yeah. So another great thing about it. So I have this down as final rating, and that's per tradition. But we already know this is a 10 out of 10 for me. This is the best game that there is. There's nothing that I like more than this game. It is a game I highly, highly recommend to absolutely everybody. and you should play it. You should go online and play it. You can, I think, try it for free there. And I mean, why wouldn't you? But what I wanted to do here is sort of to compare it with first edition. So first edition came out in 2009, and I got one of the first sets, I think. I was in a phase when I was buying every game that came out, and I bought this, and it was rough. It was this paper mat, and it was only 2 decks and then 2 more. And so you had 4 decks, but it was kind of cool because you could, try different things against each other. And I just thought this is a very fun game. And then they kept supporting it, and the original kind of 8 factions came out, and then they started doing more. I mean, they made a master set with even more, and then a couple more until it got to 16 kind of factions. And then they did second summoners for each of those factions, and then they did 8 hybrid decks that took components or sort of concepts from 2 of those faction decks and melded them together. And that's what first edition was. It was just that. And honestly, first edition was the best game ever, and I was a little resilient to the second edition. I eventually decided I love the second edition as well because they've kept supporting it, right? And first edition, obviously, it's not supported anymore. I have a couple of boxes of it because I still love it, but it's so. What are the differences? Well, there's a semantic difference in that gates are now, or sorry, walls. It used to be called a wall, now it's called a gate. Who cares about that? A big difference was how magic was tracked. In first edition, whenever you destroyed a card or put a card into your magic pile, you just took that card and put it into your pile. And all the cards had different colored backs and with a different symbol representing the faction, which is kind of cool, actually. But then it was easy to sort things out. Now that's no longer the case. All the cards have the same back because the deck building is more open in second edition. But so you had kind of this extra concept of managing which cards were in your draw pile, which cards were in your magic pile, where they could be used for nothing except spending them as magic, and then which cards ultimately would be in your discard pile. And there were some factions where that would matter. If you put a card into your magic pile, you couldn't use it again, but they could pull things out of the discard. And so there was some interesting math with, if you put a card into your magic pile and then you spend it to put it into your discard pile and then pull it back out with an ability, there was sort of a discount on that card. And you could get people who would talk about the math of Summoner Wars. Anyway, but that concept is now you have this little track and you move it up and down as you get magic. Honestly, I preferred the old method, but the new method's much cleaner, much easier. It's in the old one, you could always ask someone how much magic they had, and you'd have to ask, and people would have to stop and count their cards. Whereas now you can just look at their track. It's very obvious, very easy. Probably a positive change. Another thing is the dice. It used to be that a hit was just a 3 or higher, 3 or higher for ranged or melee. Now we have symbols, and so the bow looks for a bow, the sword looks for a sword. There's also this other symbol that can be manipulated with some abilities. And that enables the deck to have sort of the attacks to have different probabilities. It also is a little bit easier, right? You just sort of look for what you're rolling. It was sometimes, you'd play the old version and people would say, okay, so what's a hit? 3 or higher. And then a few turns later, what's a hit now? It's a 3 or higher. So I think that's a little cleaner. Also, in the old one, you could kill your own stuff. And if you did, you would get magic for it. And that led to some different strategies, right? There would be characters that would purposely kill their units, or they would send something weak out, attack with it, and then destroy it themselves. In new edition, if you destroy your own stuff, it just goes to your discard pile. You don't get anything out of it. I kind of like the old version, to be honest, that rule, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the new one. It just sort of, it's incorporated into the game, and so I'm fine with it. Other changes, the number of walls you had, it was 3 in the old game, 2 in your deck and 1 on the board. In the new one, it's 4, 1 on the board and 3 in your hand or in your deck, but the ones in your deck are a little bit weaker. That's a side step. I don't consider it a major change. Also, things were they died a lot easier in old Summoner Wars. In the new one, things are generally a little hardier. It allows some of the cheap common units to be a little bit more viable. In the old ones, some of the factions would just throw them all into Magic to summon their powerful champions. In later sets, that was less of an issue. They've also gotten rid of an annoying event that nobody liked called Magic Drain. I'm okay with that one being gone. Anyway, there's a couple of changes, but if you know how to play old Summoner Wars, you can learn new Summoner Wars in a minute. And it's a 5-minute teach anyway. But you could easily pick this up. You could also go backwards. It's not that big a deal to go backwards. It's just a couple of different things. But anyway, whichever version you have, they're both great. I would say to people, get the new one just because it's new and there's new stuff coming out for it. They've announced 2 new factions that are coming out. One is these electric goblins, and they want to build a network of connected cards and then send an electrical surge through everything and kill all the enemies. Sounds fascinating. There's also these sea creatures that are coming out that they look kind of fun too. There's just more stuff coming. There's a great app version. There's just so much to love about Summoner Wars, and I really love it all. I love the deck building, because it's sort of the constructing of your deck. If I want to. I love the stock decks. If I want to. I love teaching it because I can sort of help people have a great experience. And I've sold so many copies of Summoner Wars. I should probably get a commission because I teach it to people all the time. Every convention I go to, I'm willing to play it. Often, middle of the day, I'll just set it out and sit there and be ready to teach somebody the game. Come and find me. Look for the Fez. It's a game that just never gets old for me. It's just that magical. And so that's why I wanted to talk about it today on my 100th episode, because it's number 1 of 100 for me. Anyway, I've talked about Summoner Wars enough for now. I'll give it a break. At some point, I may come back and do my favorite factions or something like that. But for now, we'll put Summoner Wars back on the shelf until someone comes over to play it with me. And I'm going to end it here. Thanks for sticking with me for 100 episodes. And here's to 100 more. Until then, I'm going to wish you safe travels and courage when you need it. And I hope to see you back again soon for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.